Welcome back to another episode on antisemitism in English literature. In our last episode, we looked at the Edict of Expulsion and what this meant for Britain's Jews. Today, we'll be talking about the medieval period, with a special focus on the 14th century. But before we begin, don't forget to like and subscribe. So, what was going on for the Jews at this time? The Jews were expelled from England in the year 1290. Only those who had converted to Christianity, often forcibly, remained, and they were very few in number. Most were to be found in the Domus Conversorum, an institution for converted Jews in London. They are easily identifiable in historical records, since it was customary for them to change their surname to something along the lines of Conversus or Le Convert. For example, we know that a woman called Juliana the Convert was a registered resident of the Domus in 1308. Given the circumstances, most people living in 14th century England had never met a Jew in their life. What they knew usually came from a combination of questionable source material and hearsay. They were familiar with the myth rather than the reality. Despite the overwhelming absence of Jews, many were still fearful of crypto-Judaism amongst the newly converted. The threat of double apostasy became a common concern, and the negative stereotype of the Jew as chaos agent, even post-expulsion, lived on. Antisemitism therefore pervaded the literature of the period. One of the most important writers in medieval England was Geoffrey Chaucer, known to us as the father of English literature. Born in the 1340s and descended from wealthy winemakers, Chaucer was a poet, diplomat, and civil servant. He is best remembered for the Canterbury Tales, a frame narrative in which 30 pilgrims engage in a storytelling contest while travelling to the shrine of Thomas à Becket. Chaucer's work was unusual for its time, because he chose to write in English when Latin was considered the Grammatica, and most upper-class English subjects spoke French. It is also part of what made his work incredibly popular. However, there are a number of stories in the Canterbury Tales with noteworthy relevance to Jews and antisemitism. The Prioress's Tale, for example, has received a great deal of critical attention for its use of blood libel. The story is as follows. A devout little Christian boy sings a song about the Virgin Mary whilst walking to a Jewish ghetto. Satan convinces the Jewish residents to murder the boy for undermining their religious law. The local magistrate then has the Jews hanged. Before their expulsion, Jews were often accused, in large numbers and without evidence, of ritually slaughtering Christian children. Chaucer's tale reflects an established anti-Semitic tradition. Jews' association with the devil was also entrenched in the medieval mindset. In the tale, Chaucer describes how the serpent Satan has a wasp's nest in Jews' hearts, thus portraying the collective Jew as inherently evil. The solitary Jew is cursed, the ghetto of Jews a cursed folk of new Herods. Chaucer here references the massacre of the innocents carried out by the Roman Jewish King Herod before the birth of Jesus, a biblical narrative for which modern scholars say there is no historical evidence. In the Prioress's Tale, justice is ultimately figured as gratuitous anti-Semitic violence, as the lawful eradication of the mythic Jewish villain. The verse reads, "Evil shall have what evil will deserve. Therefore with wild horses he, the magistrate, had them torn apart, and after that he hanged them by the law." It is important to draw attention to these details because Chaucer's legacy is extensive. The British Library refers to the Canterbury Tales as one of the best-loved works in the history of English literature. Centuries later, Chaucer is still one of the foremost authors in our literary canon. Chaucer wasn't alone in his writings about Jews. Let's take a look at his contemporaries. One of Chaucer's close personal friends was John Gower. Born in 1330, Gower authored a collection of short narrative poems entitled Confessio Amantis. In Book 7, at the beginning of the section on the virtue of pity, you can find a story similar to that of Chaucer's The Prioress's Tale, the pagan and the Jew. Gower's poem tells of two travellers, a pagan and a Jew, one on a donkey and one on foot. They ask one another about their beliefs. The Jew says, "By my faith I ought to be true to no man, except he be a Jew as I am." Later, when the Jew is tired and hot, he asks to ride the pagan's donkey. The pagan consents and they continue their journey. However, when the pagan asks the Jew to return the donkey, he refuses on the grounds that he has performed his duty by law. The pagan prays to God to provide judgment and later finds the Jew killed by a lion, the donkey standing beside him. Gower concludes, "Lack of pity is the cause of evil." The poem contains several anti-Semitic tropes. Gower's Jew is untrustworthy, pitiless, and morally bankrupt. He exists only as a religious caricature. Another example of literary anti-Semitism in the medieval period is the anonymous and very popular ballad, Sir Hugh, or the Jew's Daughter. This text, like the Prioress's Tale, capitalizes on the blood libel. It alludes to the case of 1255, when 90 Jews were accused of crucifying a boy from Lincoln, later dubbed Little St. Hugh. 18 were hanged. In the ballad, the Jew's daughter tempts the boy with a powdered apple and stabs him with a penknife. And out and came the thick, thick blood, and out and came the thin, and out and came the bonny heart's blood, there ne'er was life left in. This anti-Semitic ballad was then preserved by another tradition, that of folk music. The text inspired many artists, from renowned 20th century composers like Benjamin Britten with his Little Sir William, to living artists like Sam Lee with his The Jew's Garden. The extensive list of modern recordings points to the enduring legacy of this jarring text. In fact, just a few years ago, a school in Lincolnshire called St. Hugh's School edited its logo to dilute its association with the ballad. Medieval literature was prey to a plethora of anti-Semitic tropes. The portrayal of Jews by Chaucer, Gower, and others was fixated on their supposed villainy, lack of pity, and bloody-mindedness. Jews represented the antithesis of Christian virtues such as charity and love. That brings us to the end of this episode on anti-Semitism in medieval literature. Stay tuned for our next segment on anti-Semitism in the literature of the early modern period. See you next time.